I'm not going to sit here and tell you I don't have any friends, but I will say that I don't have many, and even fewer that I'd categorize as close friends. That's for sure. Out of curiosity, I looked up the averages, how many friends men my age are supposed to have, and it turns out I'm well below that line. But it's not just the number or the lack thereof. It's the frequency of visitation that I'm well below too. I have friends that I consider close who I barely see, largely undercutting my perception or belief that they are of the close variety. And it's not like that for all of them. A few I see more often than others, but most infrequent at best. Rare if I'm being honest. And look, I'm not difficult for the sake of it. I'm not trying to be an iconoclast or some lone wolf archetype, but I'm also not surprised. I know that I can be challenging. I have a tendency towards stringency, and I'm loyal to my values, maybe even more so than I am to my friends. I can sometimes be too exacting for my own good when balancing friendship against character in the people I associate with. And when you stack that next to how I view loyalty and integrity and support, it's not exactly a recipe for broad social appeal. Still, I don't think it's about being unlikable. I think it's about the standards I carry into relationships, and especially friendships. I expect a lot, maybe too much. And lately I've been wondering, is that a virtue or a liability? Is holding friends to a high standard admirable or toxic? I concede that one of my most problematic personality traits is that I have very high expectations for my friends. Not to be my friend. I mean that once we're friends, I expect you to be the best version of yourself more times than not. Lapses are to be expected, but not to be repeated. We're human after all, and to err is to be human, so to speak. But what we don't change is a choice. And what we repeat is what we become. What we did by the time the day is done is what we meant all along. So I expect those lapses to be few and far between, or I'm going to start calling an audible. Now, like anything, if taken to extremes, this can be toxic. You can absolutely cross the line into expecting things from people that they're either unwilling or unable to give, even if you believe deeply, irrationally, that they should be able to. I run into this problem all the time. And every time I do, the first person I think of is Marcus Aurelius. His general stance is that you shouldn't hold others to the standards you hold yourself. You absolutely should have high standards for yourself, yes, but those same standards shouldn't be imposed on others. It's a cornerstone of his philosophy on how to deal with people, and it sounds very noble and wise. But like a lot of noble and wise things, I have an incredibly difficult time implementing it in my actual life. Now, to be fair, I don't hold strangers to a high standard. I don't even think about them that much. My problem is with people I consider to be in my inner circle, the ones I actually care about and am invested in. I expect a lot from them, and this is where the cognitive dissonance makes itself real. Because if I take Marcus at his word, I should let go of these expectations. But then there's that other idea, the one that comes up constantly in self-help and networking circles. You are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I don't even know where this quote originated, but it's everywhere. And it makes sense, right? If I surround myself with people who aren't striving for something, isn't that like anchoring myself to dead weight? If I hold myself to a high standard, but then deliberately allow the people who are closest to me to operate at a lower standard, doesn't that create a net negative? Doesn't that contradict everything we've been told about progress and self-improvement? I sincerely subscribe to the idea that a rising tide raises all ships, so I try to raise my tide. But then, according to Marcus Aurelius, I should just let the other ships do whatever they're going to do, even if they're taking on water or actively sinking. And that feels wrong, like I'm betraying some core belief about what it means to push forward in life. And this isn't just an abstract debate for me. I've felt this tension in very real ways. It's one of the reasons why I gave up on social media. It's not social media writ large that bothers me. It's my wildly inconsistent friends and their consistently indefensible failings that make me close my accounts. I'm not asking for perfection or excessive effort, just some level of intellectual flexibility and self-awareness. And yet I've seen time and time again that people I consider friends are seemingly incapable of even the most superficial levels of self-regulation. And if that's the standard they hold themselves to, then are they really enriching my life with their presence? When you need people around you who are growing and evolving, but you're only seeing regression or stagnation, you have to wonder what that says about you more than them. And now let me be clear. I'm not saying friendship should be purely transactional. I know that real friendships are built on far more than mutual benefit. I also know that not everyone expresses support in the same way. And that's fair. But what I am saying is that friendship at its core is a relationship. And relationships, whether we like to admit it or not, require some kind of investment. If someone consistently takes but never gives, if they never show interest in the things that matter to me, then what exactly makes them a friend? I don't think it's wrong to evaluate friendships based on that. I think most of us have too many so-called friends who are really just acquaintances, or in some cases, barely even that. But then I circle back to Marcus. Maybe I am imposing too much on people. Maybe the problem isn't that they aren't good friends. Maybe it's that my standards are unreasonable. Not everyone views friendship the same way I do. Some people see it as casual companionship rather than an active investment. Some people don't think about friendship in terms of support at all. And this is where I have to be careful, because I don't just want to be a better friend. I want to be a better father. The last thing I want is to turn this high expectations mindset into something that burdens my kids. I want them to have high standards for themselves, but I don't want them to feel like their worth is tied to achievement. I don't want to be the kind of father who makes them feel like they have to earn my approval. I don't want them sitting in therapy one day talking about how their dad made them feel like they were never good enough. So how do I reconcile this? Maybe the real issue isn't high standards. Maybe it's imposed standards. It's the difference between expecting and inspiring. If I live by my own standards without forcing them on others, then maybe the right people will naturally rise with me. Maybe the ones who don't want to will fall away on their own. Or maybe I'm just overthinking this and should try to be a better friend without turning it into a moral dilemma. That's probably the healthier move, but I'm not sure I know how to turn that part of my brain off. And I'm not even sure if I should have to. But that's the problem with overthinking. You're never quite sure if it's helping or not. Kind of like more people in my inner circle of friends than I care to admit. Although that seems uncharitable. One last thought. I want the onus to be on the individual. As in, the onus should be on me to uphold these standards or for them to do the same. I shouldn't be policing these standards or having someone else's standards enforced on me. At least not unilaterally. Friendship shouldn't be tyranny. The onus should be on me to reframe it as such if I can remember to do so when the need arises. Sometimes easier said than done. The idea is simple. Be strict with yourself, but tolerant with others. And at first, I think, yeah, that makes sense. But the more I sit with it, the more I realize maybe it's not just about tolerance. Maybe the missing piece is sequence. You don't start by holding others to your standard. You start by proving you can hold yourself to those standards first. And if you can sustain that, if it's real, if it's not just an expectation but a lived reality, then and only then does it make sense to extend it outward. But not by force, and not by threats, and not by judgment, but by example. Influence, to whatever degree one wields or exerts it, should come from self-discipline, not imposed demand.